intuitively recreated, projects that resonated within Barnaby's own carefully nurtured imagination. 5 of the remaining projects were less than brilliant. And then there was Astrid's. In her primitive oil painting, she had imagined a 5th-century Norse funeral scene in which a young woman lay in a wooden bier, her white-clad body covered with wildflowers. Historically, he knew it had absolutely no connection to Norse life, but the face was indelibly lovely, surrounded by its helmet of blonde hair. Looking at it, he realized it was a self-portrait of the doctoral student standing beside him, the artist herself. "How did you research the context for this funeral scene?" he found himself asking her. "We have no evidence of how a Norse funeral was conducted in the 5th century." "I imagined it, Dr. Finchem," she said, gazing up at him with those exquisite blue eyes. By all that was holy, he knew he could not vote for her project. But when the competition was over, she expressed no disappointment at all when she came up to him at the reception. "Just meeting you, Dr. Finchem, has been the greatest thrill of my life," she said. He felt his resistance melting away. 20 minutes after leaving the Red Sox game, he was unlocking the great steel door that led into his lair on the Long Wharf. He turned on the overhead lights in the single massive chamber. About 50 feet by 50 feet, it had 20-foot-high ceilings and rough-hewn oak beams that braced the whole expanse. The windows overlooking the harbor were clad with iron shutters. The first section of the chamber included a fully equipped laboratory with all the assets necessary for both an archaeologist and a pathologist, including a computer lab, printers, cameras, recorders, and flat-screen television monitors. Astrid was nearly overcome with emotion in the second area of the chamber. It was Barnaby's Norse library, with documents, diaries, old vellum manuscripts, and rune tablets going back 12 centuries. On the wall, she saw a hint of his vast collection of Viking swords, tools, shields, and knives. The final section was his living area, which included an expansive kitchen. Copper pots and pans hung from an iron rack above commercial appliances and granite countertops. "I like to cook," he said. Her eyes wandered away from the kitchen to the nearby elevated sleeping loft, which was constructed from raw timbers and covered with animal pelts and sheepskin rugs. "A 10th-century Viking sleeping pallet," said Astrid observantly. "I've always wondered if they would have been comfortable while sleeping in the nude. How would you research that, Dr. Finchem?" They came together on the pallet. Barnaby no longer cared whether his students bedded him for his brains, his fame, his marking pen, or his ability to further their career. At 69, he still loved the feel and touch of a beautiful woman without having to pay her alimony. He had been down that road more than once. The only impediment to his anticipated pleasure was buried inside his upper chest. It was an implanted cardioverter defibrillator, or ICD, which he had been assured by his doctors would correct most life-threatening cardiac arrhythmias after the last heart attack. The ICD had never met Astrid. When they had finished, he turned wearily onto his back and stretched out his 6.5-foot frame. It had been good, very good. He was falling into a deep sleep when the cell phone he had left on the kitchen counter began to ring. It was a new phone, and he had set the ringtone to the cries of a flock of seagulls, the least obnoxious tone on the list. He had not bothered to set a ring limit before it went to an answering message, and the cawing went on and on. After 2 minutes of the shrieking cries, the gulls sounded as if they were coming to eat him alive. No one except Astrid knew the new number, and she was lying insensate next to him in the Viking pallet. But what if she had shared it with someone else? That was the likeliest possibility. What had seemed like such a good decision in the cab was probably